at the University of Central Florida. She graduated from Rollins College with experience as a student researcher in organic chemistry. Cecilia is an ACS scholar and leader, and also part of the Accesso program. As a chemist with a service dog, Cecilia has faced many hardships, leading her to speaking out about her experiences. She has presented at Rollins College and at the University of Central Florida on the topic of invisible disabilities and service dogs. Additionally, she has a published comic titled My Life, My Health, and My Service Dog that presents these topics in an engaging way. Without any further ado, go ahead.
Shokif Chuberush Konoher, Miyin Cecilia Hernandez, Yanik Jo Kachikel, Yaninak Poro Maya Kachikel. Hello, my name is Cecilia Hernandez and I am Maya Kachikel. What I just spoke to you with was just a little Kachikel. After attending this panel last year, I was inspired to continue learning about my heritage, to continue speaking up and sharing ideas with others. Although it was only a little, I'm still proud that I was able to speak it for all of you here today. So as many of us have done research, we know that it takes many forms. Some of us work in the lab, some in the field, and some in scholarly or writing research fields. For my service dog, her research project is me. My service dog is a golden retriever named Canela, which some of you may recognize as the Spanish word for cinnamon. Due to her heightened sense of smell, Canela is able to observe changes happening within my body, such as abnormal heart rate or providing medical alerts, which range from flare-ups to allergy alerts. As my health continues to change, Canela definitely has her work cut out for her. She is constantly learning and observing. This is reminiscent to how, as researchers, we are constantly learning and seeking out the best way to solve the problems that we are looking at. By using her sense of smell, Canela gets to observe these medical changes firsthand and is able to see what others cannot. So while we know that there are many barriers to research, such as funding, departmental disputes, coworkers, or maybe a lack of physical resources, for Canela, her biggest barrier is the bias from those around us. So now that you are familiar with Canela and her research, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Cecilia. I recently graduated from Rollins College back in May, where we went a little bit viral. We were featured on ABC News Tonight, Good Morning America, and People.com. Currently, I just began my first semester as a PhD student at the University of Central Florida, working in Dr. Jerka's lab. I'm studying inorganic chemistry and focusing on catalysis. Compared to many of you here, I'm only at the starting point of my professional career. However, in order to get to this point, I have already, on top of my own health, faced many barriers and difficulties. Today, I want to give you all a deep dive on what this entails, such as the rose-colored glasses view of what having a service dog is like, our story, and what you all can do to help other service dog handlers succeed. So while it's true that I've always struggled with my health, there was one major incident which led to me getting Canela. In 2021, just 2 weeks before the start of college, I was rushed into emergency surgery. Here, I found out that on top of having a major cyst, I was also diagnosed with endometriosis. Endometriosis is a disorder where tissue that is similar to the tissue that lines the uterus grows in places where it does not belong. This tissue then becomes inflamed and it causes immense pain in the places where it is located. Endometriosis is not limited to growing in the uterus. It is actually a full body condition. Endo has been found in places such as the brain, the heart, and the liver and the lungs. At the time when finding out I had endometriosis, I realized I could no longer manage my health on my own. The symptoms were too much for me to handle, on top of my other health issues, and flare-ups could occur at any time. It became impossible for me to make plans for fear of my health getting in the way. And if I were to tough it out, I would push myself too far, not knowing my limits, and become out of commission for longer. This is what led to me getting Canela. I worked with a personal trainer from JM Canine Services and started training Canela as a puppy, where she got to learn and observe how my health changed, so that way when the time came to train her on medical alerts, she already had a general idea of what that would look like. Thanks to Canella, I am now warned in advance of potential flare-ups, so I can take medication to help mitigate these symptoms. Additionally, she can perform something called DPT, which stands for deep pressure therapy, in which she's able to hit certain pressure points to help diminish the amount of pain that I'm in. Autoimmune disorders, including endometriosis, are invisible, and if it wasn't for this screen in front of you, you would have never guessed that I was so sick. Due to the bias surrounding invisible disabilities, this starts to bleed into service dog bias as well. So as you can see here in the first box, I have real quotes that were said to me before getting a service dog, and then you can see how this correlates to service dog bias, real quotes that I've gotten since getting a service dog. But what can we do about this? Bias will always exist. However, I believe this is primarily due to misinformation and ignorance on what a service dog can do and what invisible disabilities are like. This is a big reason why I choose to share my health stories. By not sugarcoating it, people are more likely to listen and remember what invisible disabilities are and what service dogs can do. This leads me into what I like to call the rose-colored glasses effect. Since getting a service dog, I tend to hear people say, "You are so lucky, you get to look at that adorable face every single day." And while it's true, I feel incredibly lucky and blessed to have such a wonderful pup to be my service dog, it also overshadows a lot of the barriers that we face every day. This is what I like to call the rose-colored glasses effect, as people see a dog and immediately begin to think of all the positives rather than the negatives. So I want to share some real examples from my life. The first one, which occurs most often, is when I'm walking in the hallways to classes, multiple people will verbally bark at us. A few of these people have admitted that it's to test her to see if she's a real service dog. This happens so frequently that it can feel very dehumanizing. Another one is that people will follow us around in hiding and they'll take pictures when I'm not looking. So although I know that they're taking pictures of my service dog, it doesn't change the fact that this is by definition stalking. Additionally, people can be very insistent and try to pet Canella even after I tell them no. During times like this, Canella tends to go in between my legs to shield herself, but people will still reach there just to try and pet her. On the screen here, I have a slide from my comic titled My Life, My Health, and My Service Dog. And this is how I depict these experiences. Because when I explain them to everybody else, they'll say, oh, they're just looking at the dog. But to me, it could be very intimidating. And from my perspective, it could be very scary as well. So, as I mentioned before, one of the barriers we face in the STEM field is bias. It can be incredibly difficult to focus on research when these experiences are happening nearly every day. And this is not an exaggeration. There are weeks where I have a bad experience like the ones I described literally happen every single day. So, as you can imagine, due to the biases we face, it can make it even harder for people to take us seriously as chemistry professionals in the lab. And it is only thanks to the many wonderful people I had in my life that we were able to train Canella to be prepared for the lab. At Rollins College, my professors allowed me to train with Canella and get her used to wearing her PPE, including in the lab environment. One professor actually brought his whole research group into the lab to make common lab noises. So things like the vacuums turning on, moving glassware around, opening and closing doors, things that happen in a regular research setting. Some of the gear Canella needs to do her job include a full body jacket, some closed-toe booties, goggles or doggles, as my professors like to call it, a protective mat, which just serves as that extra layer of protection between herself and the floor with any potential contaminants, and headphones. The reason why she wears headphones is because in my research I use a lot of sonication, so I want to make sure I can protect her hearing in the long run. So I always make sure to put those headphones on when I'm doing experiments like that. So this leads me into what you all can do if you encounter somebody with a service dog. So number one, while I know that not everybody can go above and beyond like the professors at Rollins College did for me, if you are in a position where you can allow a service dog to be trained in your lab, it could be a great help to many of the rising STEM professionals who want to have or do have service dogs. And although I have been honest with my health experiences, I did so because I wanted to on my own terms. With that said, do not ask other people about their personal medical information. There are many, many reasons why somebody would not want to share, and if medical information is needed for the person's safety, generally they will approach you on their own terms and they'll let you know. For colleges and universities, typically this will come in an accommodation letter. Additionally, do not take pictures without asking. So it can be very taxing on somebody's mental health to always be looking over their shoulder trying to see if somebody is watching them. For this, it's better to just ask, can I take a picture? Typically for myself, I'll move out of the way if I'm in a busy hallway, and that way you can get a better picture without me in the frame. So typically I'm okay with it, but please keep in mind that if somebody else says no, please respect that no. Also, never let bias cloud your judgment. So while it's true having a service dog in STEM is rare, you should never assume that every service dog is fake. Service dogs do have bad days. They're not robots. Sometimes people will take video clips of a service dog making a mistake and they'll say, oh, that's clearly a fake. Sometimes they just have bad days, just like people do. Let a person's resume do the talking rather than a medical tool. Additionally, do not ask to pet a service dog. I have had more people than I can count approach me asking to pet Canella. And although on her vest it says, I do not pet, I will always hear people say the phrase, it doesn't hurt to ask. And when it comes to service dogs, it can actually do some harm. So I've heard of many service dog handlers getting exhausted, having to explain to people why they cannot pet a service dog, to the point where they give up and they just let the person have their way. And then the next service dog they approach, they'll go ahead and pet without asking. So it ends up perpetuating this problem more. So the main reason why you should never pet a service dog is that, number one, it could be very distracting. A service dog should be focused on the handler. If they're constantly looking around trying to see if somebody's reaching for them, they could get very nervous about it. Additionally, it could break a service dog's training if they're constantly excited to see people. So some of you may have dogs at home, and when you come home, they'll be very excited to see you. They'll be jumping around. So imagine if a service dog was excited to see every single person that walked into this room. They would not act like a service dog, for one, and that would once again cause issues where people would take videos and say, oh, this is a fake service dog, but also they would be too distracted to do their job. Additionally, it can make the person behind the service dog feel invisible, especially in professional settings. So for example, if I was giving a poster presentation right now or a research presentation and somebody were to ask me, can I pet the service dog? I would feel invisible, like my research like nobody was paying attention to my research or what I could bring into the field. So by doing research, we are always making the invisible visible, whether that be opening new doors to catalysis, to making strides in health, or to piecing together how the nature around us works. Every day, Canella is doing the same for me. She can see what others cannot. Just like how we as scientists are making our ideas and our projects into reality, let's all choose to take a page out of Canella's book and choose to make science more accessible and inclusive to those with disabilities. Thank you. If you want to hear more from me, you can follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram. This QR code leads to all of those, so it's all in one spot. Thank you very much.